So do 3 from theme 1 and then do 2 from theme 2.
So 5 now?
So 5, yeah. So you'll have to double up on one of your experiences. I'll make sure to change that online when I post it too, so you guys won't be confused.
So you want us to still only use 4 examples, but have one of the 4 examples have 2?
At 4 examples minimum. So you
So
can
I
do
could do a fifth
you
one.
could do a 5th one.
So, like for theme 2, you could have one in each.
So you could do maybe one as memory and one as neural plasticity and explain it, and that would be year 2. So you can kind of do it by each class period. So each class period, I think I've gone over one learning mechanism, so think of it like that. If you go over the syllabus, it should break it down for you, each learning mechanism pretty well. And I think at the beginning of each unit, I list all of the learning mechanisms in each thing, so you can just pick from there too. On my requirements on D2L, I think I make an exhaustive list of all the topics you could possibly choose to cover. So that's another example for you.
So we're writing this whole paper on like one class or one experience, or we let you use like, in this class I learned it right this way.
I want you to do one class or one experience.
Like for everything, just all 5 examples pertaining to one class.
Mhm. Does that make sense to everyone? So all 5 examples coming from one class or one experience. So in my example, I would just use that one math class. I think some creative ones that I got last year was some guy wrote about being in the Army or the Navy. I got one about Boy Scouts. I got one about being on the swim team. I don't remember what she used, but it was kind of interesting to look at. Other
So it doesn't have to
examples?
be necessarily like a school classroom.
No, as long as you can use it like conditioning or analogical reasoning or motivation in that context and make sure you explain it really well, I'd be happy to hear other experience. As long as you're learning something, I think that's fun of it. I think it's easier for you guys too. It makes it a little bit better to relate. Any other questions about this? So one class. So if you do math class, you can pick the different topics you learned in math class. So say the teacher taught one lesson through conditioning or maybe repetition, so statistical learning, like they kept giving you those, the multiplication tables over and over again, and soon you began to correlate the different responses with the different things. You know what I'm talking about? So you can use one class, but different examples from that one class. If anyone has any other questions or wants me to look over a paper before it's due, feel free to email it to me and I'll let you know if you're on the right track. So if you have an outline and you kind of want my input on this, feel free to email me. So if you have any other specific questions or if you want to know, hey, am I doing this right, that is perfectly acceptable. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're going to go a little bit into the adolescent brain. So, did everyone do their readings? And remember the hormone brain reading? There's a little blurb on that. So the prefrontal cortex is not fully developed in adolescent's brain. So if you visualize the brain, you can have one here. The brain kind of matures from the back first and then goes over to the front. And so the front area, the frontal cortex, is the last area to develop. The back area, including the brainstem, is the first to develop, according to so that controls things like breathing, reflex functions, really basic caveman type stuff. So if you're trying to think about that, think of the caveman. So it's kind of sad because you have all of these back structures, so you have your caveman type things. And that develops first. And then in your frontal cortex over here in the front, that develops last. And that is all that good stuff like planning, judgment, like, is this a good idea or is it not a good idea? And that develops last. So think of that when you think of brain development. And so your brain doesn't actually fully develop until you're 25 years old, and that's when your frontal cortex is considered fully developed. Scientists consider you to be at your, not peak, but full intellectual development at around age 15 or 16. So you have all of this smart, cognitive power when you're 16 or 17. But you don't have that frontal cortex, so if you remember that frontal part that says like, hey, is this a good idea? And so you think you're super smart, but actually maybe your idea isn't so good. And so that's why you might see a lot of like eye rolling or that like sighing in adolescents, because they may think they know everything. Actually, they may not. We'll talk about Phineas Gage. Have you heard of him? He's the guy who was on the railroad track in the 1900s, I believe. And a railroad explosion caused a rail to go through his head, and it kind of struck on like right under his eye. And he survived, which is miraculous because it was like the 1900s and you'd think infection would kill him. But it didn't, and so it completely changed his personality. I think it went through his limbic system, which I went through earlier. Remember, that's kind of the emotional part of the brain that kind of decides aggression, fear, rewards, all that good stuff. And it completely changed his personality. So when once he was kind of a mellow, laid-back guy, he suddenly became really aggressive and really fearful and really just an angry dude. And so that was the first case that showed this direct physical structure has an impact on personality or how you interpret emotions. How does that relate back to the adolescent brain? The limbic system isn't fully developed in the adolescent brain. And so that's why a lot of adolescents have troubles with aggression, maybe thrill seeking, because their reward system isn't quite developed. So yeah, that's that. Important in problem solving, planning, and inhibiting behaviors. I think that's referring to the frontal cortex again. That isn't fully developed, as I stated earlier, so maybe teens aren't as good as planning or inhibiting their impulsive behaviors, or saying, hey, I could have, $5 now, or I could wait and have $20 later. They can't necessarily do that. Moving on to hormones, so you have that hormonal assault. I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote that. That means that you are being assaulted by all the hormones that are flooding into your system. That's a very fun imagery. Your sex hormones are highly active, so you're going through puberty. I don't think I'm going to explain that so much. But there's a lot of dopamine going around in your body during this time. If you remember, dopamine has to do with the pleasure-seeking systems in your limbic system. So that is a hypothesis for one of the reasons why teens are so thrill-seeking and impulsive, and they kind of don't have that ability to regulate their mood and excitability. I think there was one of those readings in your text that talked about how teens made worse decisions when they were driving, when they had their friends around them versus when they were alone. I think this has something to do with that. So they get more excited, your adrenal hormones are kind of excited by all those peers around you, and you're kind of, I guess, assaulted by all these hormones that are flooding through you, and that affects your ability to make good judgments. So, finally, the hormone-brain relationship. It's like an engine of a car without a skilled driver at the wheel. That you can kind of use the analogy of the experiment of driving directly onto this. You can map and align that as the target case and the base case. And those hormones make them seek those risks, thrills, and excitements. And so they want things that are going to be really, really exciting. And on the converse of that, I think it says in your text that they want things that are really low excitement as well. So they want things that maybe they don't have to put much effort into. And those brain regions controlling inhibition are not done maturing. So again, limbic system is the hot brain structure of the day. Specifically, your amygdala. So that's the reward system that controls your inhibitions. That kind of says that I want this and I want it now. That isn't done maturing yet. Does anyone have any questions about this? So, recognizing emotions. Let's talk about this. Oh, this is a cool study. So, these people used fMRI with kids and teens, and they showed them facial emotions, and they said, what is this emotion? And adolescents rely on their amygdala, so again, it's associated with emotional gut reactions. And they had problems identifying emotions of like fear, sadness, anger. And they often misread these emotions on neutral faces. So imagine a really neutral face. And they misread their facial expression as being fearful or angry. And so this might be an explanation for why teens are so angry or aggressive or make those bad decisions, because they're unable to read those facial expressions like, say, an adult or a college student. Again, dopamine, I think I referenced this earlier, is extremely abundant, and it makes teens susceptible to peer pressure, drugs, alcohol, and risky sex behaviors. It influences that motivation and reinforces behavior. So this is really active in the limbic system, and there's a lot of it going on. It's assaulting the limbic system. Again, just the knowledge that friends are watching. So again, with that car driving experiment, just the knowledge that your friends are watching you can influence your behavior. I think teens took about 40 to 60% more risky behavior, so they ran like more with red lights or yellow lights than when no one was watching. I believe this last blurb is in reference to your reading again. So you want to make note of immediate rewards versus later rewards for teens. So if you say, what was the example in the book? It was like, if you do this drug, you'll get kicked off the high school basketball team tomorrow if they find out. Versus it'll mess up your brain for life and you might stunt your intellectual growth. That's not going to work. They want to know. They only care that they're going to get kicked off of the high school basketball team. Another one is let teens make mistakes. Telling them probably won't work. They have to learn from themselves. Who here has been told really great advice and disregarded it and then made a mistake and was like, oh, that would have been avoided if I just listened to such and such? Yeah. Everybody has made this mistake. Help provide structure and organized time. So, give a little structure, make a daily calendar. That helps. Guide them through tough decisions even when they resist. So I guess that's telling you to let them make mistakes, but kind of guide them through it through organization and structure. And be patient. Okay, here's my brain structure slide again. This will help you put some concrete visualizations to what I was talking about. This is the amygdala, so this is what I was talking about. You don't need to know this for the test. I just think it's interesting, so that's why I'm showing you it. This is the amygdala. This is the one that was responsible for the rewards, emotions, making those decisions. This is the gyrus. I think that's responsible for some of that too. Is the hippocampus in there? Yep, hippocampus is right here. That's responsible for making memories and putting things from short-term to long-term. And this was your, I know it's not labeled, but that's your frontal cortex, or your prefrontal cortex, which is really responsible for all that decision-making and planning and that sort of skills. And that doesn't develop until later, and that's why teens are so bad at making decisions, or why researchers think they are, at least. Okay, so we're going to get to our groups. Disregard this, I should have believed that. So split in half. This half can be the against death penalty half, and this half will be the pro